Hello, welcome back to a new episode of the Leading Yourself podcast. I've been getting a lot of questions on an episode that I did a couple of weeks ago called The Countdown is On. I did this episode because we were at the 90-day mark to the end of the year. And I explained how for the last 4 years, I have been leveraging the last 90 days of the year to create momentum. And I've been getting a lot of questions about the how of some of the things that I shared on that episode, but also a lot of concerns and questions on how can you do that when you're in the midst of experiencing burnout. And let's be realistic, burnout is one of our realities. I'll be sharing some statistics about burnout in today's episode, but it's really concerning. And I know it's really hard when you're experiencing burnout to even try to generate the energy to create that momentum that I was talking about. So, hopefully, today I can combine these two topics, burnout and creating momentum, to help you end the year stronger than you are today and feeling more empowered and less overwhelmed so you can have a strong start of 2022. Let's dig into today's podcast episode. Welcome to the Leading Yourself podcast. This is your host, Carolina de Arriba. I'm an HR professional, health and fitness coach, wife, mom, and above all things, a goal getter. In this podcast, we're going to be digging into all things leadership, professional and career development, habits, and relationships. This is a podcast for those who want to become the best version of themselves. Those who have big dreams and are willing to embrace the journey and put in the work to achieve them. My goal is to share with you the tools, tips, and tricks to help you in your journey. So let's dig into today's episode. Okay, if you missed the episode on the countdown is on, that was an episode that I did a couple of weeks ago. Specifically, it was episode 87 of this podcast. If you missed it, I really recommend that you go back and listen to that podcast episode. During that episode, I shared how I personally leveraged the last 90 days of the year to create momentum and end the year strong, and also be in a better place for the kickoff of the new year. Here's the thing, as human beings, we believe that there's a beginning and the end with every year. And yes, it's the beginning of the end and the year, but it doesn't mean that is necessarily the beginning and the end of your goals and your dreams. You can start a goal or a dream at any point in time. It doesn't have to be January 1st, and it doesn't mean that you only have through December 31st to work on that goal. There are going to be a lot of goals that are going to take you more than a year to pursue, and there's going to be others that you're going to be able to do in a shorter period of time. So I think the first thing that we need to start with is kind of decoupling this goal setting with the new year and the fact that the end of the year is the finish line, because not always is going to be the finish line. Sometimes it's going to take us more than that point to cross that finish line, and sometimes we might have already crossed our finish line in some of our goals. So once we're able to decouple these two, then I think we take a lot of pressure off, right? Because we are only 10 weeks away from the end of the year. And a lot of people are starting to feel overwhelmed with the fact that they feel they're so behind with their goals and there's only 10 weeks left, and they're trying to figure out, how can I make this happen? First of all, give yourself some grace, right? That December 31st is not the end of the world. It's just the end of the year. And it's an opportunity to reflect and redirect and refocus our goals as we start the new year. But it doesn't mean that if you don't cross the finish line by December 31st, the world is going to come to an end. And I think, as I mentioned in the introduction of today's podcast episode, I've been getting a lot of questions about this episode that I did about the last 90 days of the year. And a lot of people are coming to me asking for advice on how can you even create that momentum, but you don't even have the energy to get through your day because you're so overwhelmed and you're so stressed and you're experiencing burnout. And I think that it's something that is very unique this year compared to other years. I think burnout has been there for a long time. And even before the pandemic, a lot of people were experiencing burnout. But I think the whole pandemic situation had worsened this. And I want to talk a little bit about that today in the episode and then kind of link that to what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago to give you some tactical tools. First of all, on how you can take care of yourself and how can you take care of your mental health in this space where you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed and burnout. But then, how can you prepare yourself to create that momentum that I was talking about a couple of weeks ago? So let's start by talking about burnout. And the reality is that we live in a world today that is so hyper connected, right? And where we often believe that if we want to be successful in our careers, in our business, in any area of our life, it requires us to take unsustainable volumes of work, meaning work harder, put in more work, put in more hours. If you work harder, you'll be able to get through this. And I think a lot of this comes from what our parents teach us, right? They taught us this work ethic of working harder. I know my parents did with me, and that has been installed in my heart drive, right? To say. And I'm always, every time I face a challenge that I feel that I'm not going to make it to a deadline or I have a project at work, what is the first thing that I think? You need to work harder. And I think when in today's world, because of how hyper connected we are and all the information that and data that comes our way and bombards us from every angle every day, we find ourselves constantly being in this space of working harder and trying to make the extra effort and putting the extra hours. And this long, over time, unsustainable level of effort tends to lead to burnout. Is one of the reasons why so many people is experiencing burnout. You know, with the pandemic, we had to pivot. We had to react to a lot of uncertainty. We had to do things that we were not doing before. And there was additional work that came as a result of just managing the pandemic alone, and that has put a lot of burden on our shoulders. And a lot of us have felt the pressure to have to work more and harder. And it's been 18 months of this work harder and increase your levels of effort and putting more hours. And at one point, we end up burning out. I mentioned in the introduction that I was going to share some statistics, and these are shocking to me when I read them. But I saw a survey that Deloitte did that revealed that more than three quarters of the workers in the US had experienced burnout in their jobs, and that high levels of workplace stress lead to an estimated of 120,000 deaths per year. 120,000 deaths per year. And a lot of times we don't associate burnout and stress with death. But the thing is that burnout impacts our physical health, our emotional health, and our mental health. And that is the reason why. It doesn't matter if you work harder or smarter. If you neglect to nurture yourself and your personal life and your priorities and check that those are in alignment with the life that you're living, you are unavoidable gonna find yourself burning out. So, burnout has get a lot of momentum lately in the corporate world, and I think more and more people are beginning to be more aware of burnout. And here's the thing, burnout doesn't happen overnight. It's not like you wake up one day and all of a sudden you're burnout. This is something that builds over time. And there's different literatures out there that talk about different levels of burnout. There's some literatures that talks about 12 levels. There are others that talk about 5 stages of burnout. I'm going to be sharing with you today the simplest one that I came across in all my research, just so we have an idea of how burnout builds up, right? It's not that, again, you wake up one morning and you're burnout. And I also believe that the key to identifying burnout is, first of all, understand what it is. And second of all, understand what are some of the signs of burnout. Not only the signs of burnout, but the early signs of burnout. So we can get to a point that we can prevent it from happening, because once you get into the stage of actual burnout, is really difficult and challenging to get out of that stage. But I also know that a lot of people that I've been talking to lately that tell me I'm experiencing burnout, they're really not experiencing burnout. They are in an early stage of burnout, which is the perfect time to take some action so you can prevent that from becoming even worse. But also, you are in a better position to get back on track and diminish some of those signs of early burnout, if that makes sense. So let's start with defining burnout. And it was very interesting as I was doing some research. What I found is that the first time that burnout was called out as such a thing was in the 1970s. And they define burnout as a severe stress condition that leads to severe physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion. It's worse than ordinary fatigue, right? Burnout makes it challenging for people to cope with stress and even to handle day to day responsibilities. So let's talk about the signs of burnout. And here's where it's really key that we develop some self awareness to identify if we are experiencing any of these. Because the earlier that we spot on some of these early signs of burnout, we are in a better position to prevent burnout and to reverse some of that stress and overwhelmed that we might be feeling right now. Okay, so let's talk about those early signs of burnout. Some people feel stress, they feel overwhelmed, they might be a little bit cynical in their conversations. Maybe at work, you are in a meeting and all of a sudden you find yourself being cynical or more cynical than usual. Frustration, feeling unfulfilled, feeling irritated, maybe losing your temper more easily, maybe feeling depleted after a long day at work, or having a sense that your work is not being recognized, that you're not being recognized for what you're doing and your contributions. Some people even have some physical signs like headaches or muscle tension or trouble to sleep, either falling asleep or staying asleep. So insomnia is a sign of stress, is a sign of, and it might be an early sign of burnout, right? So these all are signs of burnout. Now, if you're experiencing one or several of these things, might not always tell you that you're experiencing burnout, but you might be on an early stage of burnout. And as I said, that is the perfect time to take action. But the first thing where we need to start is with self awareness. And the only way to create that self awareness is to create space to connect with ourselves and label how are we feeling. I had read about this technique in a different context, but I think that it really applies here as well. You know, it's a matter of whenever during the day having a notebook with you and writing down, labeling your feelings. I'm feeling tired right now. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling unappreciated. I'm feeling I can't focus. I'm feeling I I'm procrastinating. I'm feeling low energy, because all those are early signs of burnout. But a lot of times we are so busy with the day to day and we are in go go mode, because remember what I said at the beginning, we think we just need to work harder to make progress. And we say, okay, I'm not feeling productive right now. I just need to work harder to get back on track. And in that dialogue, we perpetuate this cycle in our minds, and we don't pay attention to all these things that we're feeling and we're experiencing. So it's important to label those things. And the way I like to do it is I have a notebook with me all the time. And anytime that I'm not feeling myself, that I'm feeling stressed or tired or feeling that I can't focus or can concentrate, or that I'm procrastinating, or that I was a little bit cynical in that discussion, I wrote it down on a piece of paper. And that just helps me create awareness. Now, let's talk about the 5 stages of burnout. The very first stage is actually a stage of wellness, as they call it, work wellness or enthusiasm. This is when you set a personal goal and you are highly invested in this goal. You have a great deal of energy and you're feeling optimistic, and challenges are coming your way and you're knocking them down, and you are making progress. And yes, this is the very first stage, and this is where we all want to be, right? We all want to feel optimistic and empowered and feel that we have energy in pursuing our dreams, and like we can knock down challenges right and left. And then comes phase 2. Phase 2 is when we start feeling stress. This is the beginning stages of stress. And it might lead to stagnation. Your life becomes limited maybe to work and taking care of your business if you are a business owner, but then your family and your personal priorities start to suffer. And you try harder, right, to change things, and you tell yourself that you need to work harder. But a lot of times you work hard and hard and hard, and it just leads to disappointments because you feel you're not getting the traction and you're starting to feel stress. The third stage is a stage of ongoing stress. So this is not, I had a bad day where I was really stressed, and then I had a good day where I really felt empowered, as in stage 2. But in stage 2 is this ongoing level of stress, and you're experiencing frustration. You're experiencing a sense of failure and powerlessness. Your efforts are not visibly paying off. Maybe you feel that you're not receiving enough acknowledgement, and that leads you to feel incomplete and like you're not good enough, and imposter syndrome starts to kick in this space. Then we have phase 4. This is the phase of initial burnout. It's a stage of apathy. Is a despair and disillusion happens here. You see, you feel that there's no way out of your situation, and you start to become indifferent to things around you that in the past were important. And you might start to experience many of those symptoms that I just talked about a few minutes ago. And then the last stage is chronic burnout. And chronic burnout is a stage where intervention is needed. Is a stage where you feel helpless and you're actively experiencing this burnout, all the symptoms, and you feel that you even struggle to get like day-to-day things done. I've heard of people that even struggle to get out of bed at this point. Even getting out of bed is really a struggle. Not to say to work on a goal or create momentum, as I was talking 2 weeks ago, right? You're physically exhausted. you're mentally and emotionally exhausted, and you see no way out. And here's where you really need to make a professional intervention. So those are the 5 stages of burnout. What I want to talk about is, as I mentioned, I think we a lot of times misuse the term burnout. A lot of us are saying I'm experiencing burnout, and maybe what we are experiencing is a stagnation or frustration. I think most people are probably getting to stage 3 in this 5 stages of burnout, and they're feeling really frustrated, really felt the sense of powerlessness, and they feel that their work is not being acknowledged and is not being recognized, and they're frustrated at work and they're tired, and they might experience some of those early signs of burnout, but it's still not burnout. And that is a good thing, because that means that you can do something from stopping it from getting to stage 4, which is real burnout. And not only that, but go back to stage 2, or even better, stage 1. And that is where we all want to be, in that stage of work wellness and enthusiasm. So the other day I was chatting with some friends at work. We actually did a podcast episode for a different podcast on this topic of burnout. And I was thinking on myself, and I've been experiencing some of those symptoms myself over the last months, being working from home and have to homeschool my kids and dealing with all the things. And I was trying to figure out what have been the things that have been helpful. And I kind of created this um, pyramid of burnout. If you've ever heard of the pyramid of Maslow, is a pyramid that summarizes the human needs and basically states that there are some foundational needs that until those are fulfilled, you can go to the next level of that pyramid. And I think that we can trace a pyramid like that for burnout. And this is how my pyramid looks like. At the very base, at the very foundation is basic, like, health and well-being, things like, are you sleeping enough? Do you have an evening routine that helps you relax and get to bed at a consistent time? And are you getting enough quality sleep? Are you prioritizing your sleep? The other aspect is nutrition. I think that I can speak for myself, being at home and working from home, where you don't even have the time to prepare a meal in the middle of all the meetings in the day. You grab anything that you can. And typically, those things that are easy to grab are not the best choices, right? So, how are you fueling your body? What we put in our body has a big deal on our how we feel and our levels of energy. And depending on what you eat, you might be experiencing, you know, lack of concentration after work, or not having enough energy to get through your day. So your nutrition plays a very important piece. We can do a podcast episode just on nutrition. The other thing is hydration. Are you drinking enough water? I like to bring my water bottle with me all day, but I've talked about this in previous podcast episodes. But you should be drinking at least half of your body weight in ounces of water, and that should be your minimum intake of water every day. And then the last thing is movement. Are you moving your body? A lot of people have been working from home for a long period of time, or if you have a job where you're sitting at a desk most of the day, and we don't move enough throughout the day. So getting movement, even if it's just going for a walk, can really change your mood, and that can have an impact in minimizing a lot of those early burnout signs. So, the foundation is you need to take care of yourself through your nutrition, your hydration, your movement, and your rest. Those are like the basic foundational things. And if you're experiencing any signs of burnout and you're asking yourself, where should I start? Here is where you should start, by taking care of yourself and making yourself a priority. The next layer for me, it's habits and routines. I have talked a lot about my morning routine and my evening routine in this podcast, but how can you create routine so you can automate a lot of the things that you do? So you need to put less energy into doing those things, and then you can prioritize your energy to use in the things that you need to. So, what routines can you establish in your day to help you make your day more effortless, right? When you automate something, it becomes effortless, and creating habits is a way of automating stuff. The next layer for me is boundaries. We need to set boundaries with ourselves and with others. We need to start with even ourselves. And I was sharing with a friend the other day, one of the boundaries that I have set for myself is the time at which I stop working in the afternoon. So when I was going to the office, I would get out of the office around 5 p.m. because I had to go pick up my kids from school. Now that I'm home, I could continue working until 6, 7, 8, whatever time. And here's the thing, after a certain time of the day, after a certain number of hours of being working, it takes so much more effort to do simple activities because your energy is depleted by the end of the day. And things that were taking me 2, 3 hours to do in the evening, I can do in half an hour in the morning if I just reprioritize and reorganize my work. But rest, back to rest is very important. So I set an alarm on my phone that goes off at 5:30 telling me that it's time to turn work off. And I might get on in the evenings here and there, but those are the exceptions when there's something really urgent. And I think it's important that we recognize what is urgent from what is not. Can anything that you're working on after a certain time, for me it's 5:30, for you might be a different time, can it wait for tomorrow? Or it had absolutely have to take care of it right now? And I think just asking ourselves that question can help us to respect more our own boundaries because a lot of times we do set these boundaries, but we fail to follow those boundaries. The other thing is set boundaries with others and make sure that you communicate those boundaries because if you set a boundary and say, I'm not going to answer to emails after 5:30, right? But then someone sends you an email and you respond after 5:30 and the next day they reach out to you at 7 p.m. and you respond, they're going to think that you are available at 7 p.m., right? They don't know what your boundary is. So it's important that you first respect your boundary and then you clearly share your boundaries with others and you stick to those boundaries. The next layer for me is social support. What is your circle of support? And there's this great exercise that you can do of drawing 4 concentric circles, right? And then putting the names of the people that are part of your social circle. The closer they are to that inner circle, the closer they are to you, right? And that fourth circle maybe is your acquaintances. But once you map out that social circle, you might be able to very easily see where do you have gaps. And what do I mean by a support circle? I mean people that you can go to, that you trust, that you can talk about how you feel, that you can go to for advice or just for them to listen to you so you can get that you're feeling off your chest, that are going to be there to support you, right? Who are those people? Do you have and network around you that can support you when you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed? And then the very last top of that pyramid is professional help. I think there's this stigma about seeking professional help when it comes to stress and burnout, that a lot of people feel ashamed or feel that there's something wrong if they go to a therapist or a psychologist and that they're going to feel that they're crazy or they have some mental health issues. And I think there's a lot of um, lack of knowledge, I would say, on this area, and a lot of stigma and taboo around this area. And if you need help, you need help. And there's nothing wrong with reaching out for that professional help, to go to a therapist that can help you work through your burnout situation. And again, the further along you are in the stages of burnout, the more you're going to need that professional help. And you are in stage 2 or stage 3, maybe your own social circle might be enough, along with all the other things that we've talked about. So, though that is my pyramid of burnout. And now I want to get back to this topic, because you might be thinking, okay, is this podcast episode about how to end the year strong, or is this podcast episode about burnout? And as I said, I wanted to combine the two, because a lot of you asked me a lot of questions about that end of the year, last 90 days that I talked about a couple of episodes away. And you were telling me that you can't see yourself doing that, because you can't see yourself getting through the day, even because of how overwhelmed you're feeling. So I think this last stretch to the end of the year is a great opportunity to pause, create some self-awareness, work on identifying where are we, how are we feeling, and addressing those early signs of burnout, because addressing those signs of early burnout are going to help you position yourself to create the momentum that I was talking about. And here's how you can do it. Here is maybe a process you can follow to get from feeling overwhelmed to creating momentum. Step number one is to review, right? To take a break and take a hard look at your life, to look at how are you feeling right now, where are you, what is holding you back. And if it's stress, if it's burnout, if some of these things, make sure that you prioritize that and you take care of yourself first and foremost. Um, but it's also an opportunity to see where are you in regards to your dreams and your goals. Are those still valid, or are you just working on them because you have set that goal and you told yourself that you were going to do this by the end of the year? Because a lot of times we are stubborn in that way, right? That just because we said that this was our goal, we keep going towards that goal without taking a pause to reassess if that goal is still relevant, if that dream is still our dream, or it has changed, because maybe there are circumstances in your life that have changed and therefore your goal needs to change. The next step is that you need to reframe. So we sometimes look at certain areas of our life with guilt and with shame. And I think that burnout can create that sense of guilt and shame, because we feel that we're not good enough and we get into this imposter syndrome. And we are working hard, but we're not making progress. I was telling someone, it's like you're running this marathon race, right? I used this analogy 2 episodes ago. When you set a goal, it's like you enroll to this marathon race, right? And you start the race and you're really enthusiastic and you have all the energy and you're running really fast. And then as the race keeps going, you start to see roadblocks on the way, and maybe you fall and you hurt yourself, or maybe you're seeing people passing you by and you feel discouraged because there's other people that are doing better than you, and all these things, right? But I think a lot of times when you are experiencing burnout, what you're doing is you're running and running and running, and you seem not to make any progress, but then you look down and you find out that you've been running on top of a treadmill the whole time. You've just been running in place without making any traction or progress towards your goals. And there is where you need to reframe your plan and say, okay, this is not working. And first of all, have grace to accept that, and have grace with yourself that maybe now pursuing this goal that you have should not be your priority, and that you should be your priority, that taking care of yourself should be the priority. And I think a lot of times when we feel that we're there, we need to take a pause and recharge. And this last 10 weeks of the year can be a great opportunity to recharge. And when I say recharge, what do I mean? It's like, it's not that you're giving up on your goals, but you're taking a vacation. Let's put it that way, right? You're taking a vacation to take care of yourself, to take care of how you're feeling, to take care of your stress, to address those things, to focus on making yourself a priority and focusing on your health. So then, once you're recharged, you can go back to that race, right? And keep running towards that finish line. And after you recharge, it's also worth reevaluating, is this the right race or should I be running a different race? Meaning, are these the right goals or should I be working in different goals? Because first of all, if you're looking at your goals when you're tired and you're burnout, you're probably going to feel not very energized towards your goals. You're going to feel, maybe because you're overwhelmed, you're going to feel that they're not worth pursuing anymore because you're in that negative space. And after taking that quote unquote vacation time to recharge, it's important to revisit them. Don't discard your goals in the middle of experiencing burnout, right? Wait until after you have recharged and after you have spend time in just investing in yourself and you feel that your levels of energy are back to somehow normal, to reevaluate again your goals and decide which ones you're going to keep, which ones you're going to discard, and then work on resetting your vision. And I talked about this a couple of weeks ago on that episode that I was referencing to, that one of the things that I do during this last 90 days of the year is a vision board. And by the way, I'm going to be hosting a vision board party the first Friday of November. I'm going to put the link to all the details on the show notes in case you're interested of joining. But this is a great opportunity to reset your vision and to set a vision for 2022, to reassess your priorities, to reassess your vision, and to always have an anchor in your life that serves as a compass, guiding you and giving you direction. So you're actually moving towards your dreams and not in the opposite direction. That's what a vision board is basically a compass. So that is a little bit of how to approach what I mentioned 2 weeks ago if you're in the midst of experiencing burnout. I hope that this is helpful. If it is, do me a favor. If you know someone that currently is feeling stressed, is feeling overwhelmed, maybe someone in that social circle of yours that might be feeling stuck and overwhelmed and stressed, and you think that he or she can benefit from this podcast episode, do me a favor and send them the link. And not only that, but invite them to join you to this vision board party that I'm hosting the first Friday in November. I hope to see you there. If not, at least hope to see you next week on another episode of the Leading Yourself podcast. Until then, have an amazing week.